Yeehaw, everybody! Did your boots stop working? Did your truck break down? Hello, book lovers. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mar, and one thing about me is that I come from the Yeehaw of Canada. I truly wish I were joking when I said that statement, but this is completely true. I come from a little city known as Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And recently, Calgary has been put on the map for many things. The first thing is film and production crews and studios have chosen to film things in Calgary now. So the most well-known things that have been filmed in Canada, at least, the first one is the show The Last of Us. The first season was filmed in Calgary, Alberta. They filmed on my university campus. It was a really weird time. Another thing that they've been filming in Calgary for you book lovers out there is My Life with the Walter Boys, the Wattpad fanficky show that is pretty much the bootleg Summer I Turned Pretty show that is about a love triangle on a ranch. I think they're filming the second season as of right now when I'm filming this video. A lot of shows that are filmed here are either about apocalypses or farms and cowboys. So that is Calgary in a nutshell. Another notable thing, or should I say person, that has been putting Calgary on the map is the pop singer Miss Tate McRae. She literally has a song titled Calgary, so go listen to it if you want. But I would say the most popular event that is held in Calgary is something called the Calgary Stampede. You may or may not have heard of it. If you're in the Western spaces, you probably have, but if you haven't, what the Calgary Stampede is, it's a 10-day event that occurs every July, and it's this cowboy Western themed festival, carnival slash rodeo. It's an amalgamation of many things. Everything is just Western themed. So it's like a carnival in the sense that you can go on rides, play games, get carnival food, and then during this time as well, a bunch of rodeos are happening, horse racing, bull riding, that sort of stuff. And then also at this time, there are concerts going on. Half the concerts there are like country singers, but then the other half, the city is trying to make this event sort of appeal to people who may not be fans of country singers. So a lot of the music at the festival is actually just like pop music. So this year, the Jonas Brothers came. I did go to that concert, by the way. It was a great time. Safe to say, Calgary is a city that really tries to lean into the yeehaw culture. Being someone who has been born and raised here my entire life, I personally just never saw the appeal. And I think it's just mostly due to the fact that people like me aren't really invited into these types of areas, nor do we need the invite or anything like that. I've been to one too many stampedes in my life, and I'm kind of good. I've never really seen the appeal in reality. But then I was thinking, I was like, well, if I can't understand the appeal in reality, maybe I'll understand it in the fictional sense. So, for this week's video, I decided that I'm going to be reading cowboy romances for a week. For those of you who are not familiar with the romance book genre, let me just tell you the romance genre has more subgenres than you would think it would have. One of the most popular ones are sports romances. Obviously, there are the supernatural romances, but cowboy romances have been becoming more and more popular. So I was just wondering, like, what makes this subgenre so appealing to people? For this video, I've picked 3 books that I think would be a good start into the cowboy romance genre. These are probably the most popular ones on Book Talk and on YouTube. So if you are looking for more cowboy romance recommendations, you're not getting it from this video. I'm sorry. But feel free to stay around and hear my reviews and reactions. But the first one I have downloaded is Flawless by Elsie Silver. And I think Elsie Silver is mostly known for her cowboy romances. Like, that is her main genre that she writes. All I know is all the book girlies have been raving about her Chestnut Springs series. As I was digging, it turns out that Chestnut Springs is actually, it takes place in Alberta, so the province where I live. It takes place just outside of Calgary. I believe it's fictional, but then again, Chestnut Springs could be a real thing. I just don't go outside of the city. I think that would be a good start just because I don't have to do a lot of imagining. I already know what everything looks like. I know what the fields look like. I know what the farms look like. Maybe I'll finally understand the appeal to cowboys by the end of this video. I just got to about 50% of Flawless. I just thought I would give a quick update as to what I think about this book. I understand where the girlies are coming from, like when it comes to just like a quick little romance novel. I think Elsie Silver, her writing is just very simple. I'm still at that point where it's like I still don't necessarily understand the appeal of cowboy romances, and it's just like there's something about it that's just like it's not doing it for me. That part of me has not been unlocked yet. Nothing against the book or anything like that. I think the characters are very cute, and I think this is a very wholesome book in itself. Nothing has really made this super appealing for me, but I'm still going to complete the book. It is a nice, quick little romance, and all that just takes place like out on a ranch. Those are my current thoughts on this book so far. I just finished reading Flawless by Elsie Silver. I came outside to film this video. It's currently 9 a.m. right now, and I came outside to just film this video because I needed a change up of scenery, and it is much colder outside than I expected it to be. I thought there would be more sun, but it is morning. The sun will probably come out mid-afternoon and all of that. I thought I would just quickly talk about my thoughts and all of that. Usually for these themed videos, I would say my ratings and all of that are a bit harsher. I have multiple categories that I go through. And so the first category being story, second one being characters, and then the third one being just like themed elements. So this one's going to be like, for this video, it's going to be Western elements. Overall, I gave this book a 3.75 stars. I like this book. I had a good time reading it. By the time I got to the end, I understood the appeal of it. I understood why the book girlies are reading this book series. So, with that being said, let's get into the first category, which is story. So, for story, I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't think the story was the strongest in this book, mostly due to the fact that not much happens. It's pretty much, yeah, about this girl named Summer who is working for her dad, who runs this talent agency in Calgary. She pretty much sent to live with this, this very cocky, hot-headed bull rider named Rhett. They're forced to live with each other. She gets to learn more about him. He learns more about her. Elsie Silver really tries to push on you that it's like at the beginning they act like they don't like each other and all of that, where in reality like they don't mind each other. Story wise, not much happens. Like it's just about two characters that are really just like coming to understand each other, and then they have a lot of sex afterwards. Like that's practically the book. There is drama that comes in the third act of this book, which I wish it was like a bit higher stakes. It happened during a time during the book where I was just kind of getting bored. I was starting to fall asleep. Not much was happening. I like I was just becoming disinterested, and all of a sudden the drama comes. The drama comes, it picks up. I'm like, "Oh, I'm ready for this." But then I don't know. The drama just like didn't hit as hard. I wish there was a bit more drama. I wish there was a bit more tension in this book. Also, when it came to the third act drama and all that, I don't know. I just felt like it was dealt with really quickly just so we could get to the epilogue. It just felt like it happened and then we moved on way too quickly. Those are my thoughts on story. To characters. So I'm just going to talk about the two main characters. For characters, I would give a 3.5 stars. I like them both. I think Summer, she was a really flesh out character, and same with Rhett. But I do think some of their choices in this book were also kind of questionable, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't hate any of the characters in this book, but it's sort of like, am I going to be thinking about these characters after reading this book? No. Like, I don't think so. They were characters that I really just like didn't really connect with. I think my favorite character in this book is Willa. She appears for 2 seconds. And I know she has her own book in the series. So maybe I should just read that one. Western Elements, honestly, I kind of gave like a 3.75. Like this is where most of the points are coming from. I would say it's a cowboy romance. It takes place on a ranch, and I would say that the descriptions of Calgary are very accurate. Every time Calgary was mentioned, I agreed. I agreed with what Elsie Silver wrote. So good for her. There are bullfighting or bull riding, I meant. Yeah, a lot of the story takes place of him going to his bull riding events and all that. So I actually learned a lot about bull riding. I never seen it in real life. I just never cared to go to the rodeo or anything like that. I don't know a lot about bull riding. And in this book, she describes it in a fairly like great way. Those are my thoughts on Flawless by Elsie Silver. So overall, around a 3.5, 3.75 for rating. Let's get into the next book. So the next book I decided to pick up was Done and Dusted by Lyla Sage. I thought I would use this time to sort of update you on my thoughts. I got to 40% of the way through, and I should have started with this book first because I understand now. I understand the appeal to cowboy romances. Second book in, and we did it, y'all. We did it. I think what I like about this book in particular, though, is that it's just incredibly fast paced. Even when you like see the book at the bookstore, it's really thin, really small, and it just moves really quickly. I've had a really good time reading so far, so I will update you probably when I finish the book. I just finished reading Done and Dusted by Lyla Sage, so let's quickly talk about it. So overall, gave it 4 stars, which is pretty high for me, especially in a genre that I'm not necessarily, familiar with reading. But yeah, let's just get into it. So for story, I would give this a 3.5 out of 5 for story. Again, this is more of a character-driven novel. There's not much plot to it, to be quite honest. It's pretty much about this girl named Emmy who has spent the past couple years being a professional barrel rider, racer, whatever you call it. What happens is she suffers from a traumatic event that happened while she was riding, and that causes her to move back to her hometown where she grew up, back with her family. And when she moves back, she ends up running into her older brother's best friend, who she never really got along with growing up. And as time sort of goes on, they start to get to know each other a bit more. And that's pretty much the plot of the book, and you can easily see where that's going to lead up. Even though not much happens, I still had a good time reading. So I think if you go into that mindset of like, yeah, like there's not much plot to it, then I think it's just a fun and easier, lighthearted read. Next, for characters, I would give characters a good 4 out of 5. I think because this is such a character driven novel, I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the main two characters. The main girl is Emmy, and the main guy is Luke Brooks. Both of them were just very realistic characters, and they're very wholesome together. I really liked how Lila Sage wrote about them. Their motivations were realistic, their flaws were realistic. They were characters where it's like I grew attached to them, without even really meaning to, like, become attached to them, you know? Are these characters that I'll be thinking about in the future? Possibly, actually, because I like how they were portrayed and all that. And I think with the characters as well for this book, just with the writing itself, the writing does come off a bit younger, if that makes sense. Like, Luke is supposed to be in his 30s, Emmy is in her late 20s, but when I was reading, I really thought that they were like in their early to late 20s. They felt like they were portrayed a bit younger and written a bit younger, but then again, like I'm also not in my 30s or anything like that, so I don't know how y'all millennials talk. Maybe it was completely accurate to like how millennials talk. I do wish Lila Sage expanded a bit more into sort of just like the past experiences the characters had. I felt like a lot of it was kind of just like mentioned in the book and not really expanded on. It's sort of like, oh yeah, like a character would like mention something. It would just sort of be like said in passing. So yeah, for characters, 4 out of 5. And then for Western elements, I would give it a 4 out of 5. I mean, I feel like Done and Dusted is really good for people who've never experienced the West before and don't know like what it's really like living on a ranch. The descriptions are very simplistic. It's very easy to understand. It doesn't feel like forced onto you as well. There isn't a lot of like exposition dumping as to like how things work in the West or how things work, in cowboy culture. It's sort of just like things will come up like naturally in passing with these characters and all that, which is what I sort of liked about it. So yeah, those are my thoughts for Done and Dusted. Overall, 4 stars. I personally really enjoyed it. Like the story, like the characters, like the Western elements. I have one more book I'm going to be reading for this video, and then you can hear my thoughts after as to if I'm going to be continuing reading Cowboy Romances or not. So, yeah, let's move on to the next book. The next book I decided to read is Strung Along by Hannah Cowan. And I made it to 30% of this book. And right off the bat, like after getting to 30%, I don't think I'm going to like it as much as the other 2 books I've read. And I think it primarily has to do with the writing style of it. The writing style is a bit different than Elsie Silver's and Lila Sage's writing. And it feels like I'm reading a lot of information. I'm being told a lot of things throughout this whole, I'm on chapter 15 right now. For the past 15 chapters, it feels like I've been just getting told a lot of things. And not much has happened in the actual book. And I think this book also differs in the sense that it's not straight out like a romance like the first two. Like the first two, you know very clearly that it's going to be more romance focused, and then the more so character driven things are going to be more in the background. Where this one, it feels more coming of age, and the romance, it's not in the forefront just yet. And so I don't know what to think. I've already read two books that were very romance heavy. This book is kind of just a bit too slow for me right now. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts that I have right now. I'm just wondering if it's going to put me in a slump or not. Okay, so I got to 43% of the book, and I've chosen to just DNF it because nothing about this book has been engaging me whatsoever, and I don't want to force myself to read a book that I just genuinely don't feel like reading. So, choosing to DNF it, and yeah, let's just get into my review and overall thoughts of what I've read this week. Didn't expect myself to DNF this last book, but Strung Along is just a book that I just could not get into. It just wasn't giving for me, and I just didn't want to push myself to read a book that I was genuinely not interested in or in the mood to read. So yeah, let's talk about it. Story-wise, not much was happening, and I think for me, I'm just not a huge fan of the writing, and it's a dual point of view book. It's written in first person, but the thing is, like, these characters are just like ramblers. Like, they will tell you every little bit of information about them. The previous books I read were very, I would say, simplistic, but it's sort of like you're given enough information that it's like you understand the characters' motivations and all of that, that it's like you don't need them to spell it out for you. This book, every single thing was being spelt out for you. Every single thing. It just felt like I was getting fed too much information about these characters that nothing in the books were happening. If you've read this book and you really liked it, good for you. But for me, it just was not hitting. Nothing about this book was hitting. Like, I tried my best to read it. I was reading on my iPad, and usually when I read on my iPad, I read books a lot faster because the fonts are just bigger and all that. But then it's just, I was getting bored, so then I was like, okay, maybe if I read it on my phone, that I'll read it faster because I read super fast on my phone. Nope, did not process anything. And so yeah, it's like from what I got from the story itself is that it's pretty much about this girl named Anna. And she is living in Vancouver with her fiance and all of that. And then on her birthday, she learns that her fiance has been cheating on her for months. So, she gets really upset. She decides to move away from Vancouver to this little town in Alberta called Cherry Peak, which is a fictional town and all of that. And what I liked about the book is how the town was sort of described and all of that. It was a very like cozy small town feel. It's a very much small town romance, which I don't mind in books most of the time. The main male character is he's this famous singer that comes from the town of Cherry Peak, and he goes on tour, but he has to move back home after he damages like his throat or something like that. So it's like he's on vocal rest right now and he can't sing or perform. So like that's what he's going through. There's like an accidental texting plot where she accidentally texts him thinking his number is someone else's, and then they have this text chain going on, like it's a whole you got mail situation. But then it's like they meet in real life, they don't know that they have each other's numbers or anything, and when they meet in real life, it's like it's not a good situation. Like he's really rude to her, she's really rude to him and all that. And so it's like after that point, I was sort of like, I just don't understand why these characters are getting together. Neither of them seems like they're in the right place to be in relationships. Brody is the male main character, and he's really rude. There's nothing about him that like makes me think he's a nice guy or anything like there's nothing makes him attractive to me or anything like that, which is a shame because I did end up searching up just on Audible like if there was an audiobook, which there is an audiobook for this book. And my favorite male audiobook narrator, Mr. Zachary Weber, he is the guy that does the narration for the male main character. And so I was trying when I was reading to like read it in his voice, and it worked for a bit, and then it just got to the point where I just like could not stand this male character. So, yeah. And then for Western elements, it felt forced in a way. It like all the dialogue felt forced. Like it felt like the Western vocabulary and all that was being forced down your throat. Like there were moments where she was writing them with like, Western accents, and then there were other moments where they weren't speaking in accents. The Western parts of it just like they didn't hit for me. It felt really cringy. It felt really unnatural. But again, like if you like this book, if you ate this up, good for you. But for me, this personally is not a book that I am interested in. I just expected different things from this book. And so, yeah, I didn't want to like end this video off with like me DNFing a book or like speaking about a book negatively, but yeah, we ended up in this situation. That was a week of me reading cowboy romances. Am I going to be reading cowboy romances in the future? And honestly, I think I might read some. I learned that I really like Lila Sage's writing. I really have been like I ate up Done and Dusted, and I think I will be eating up the rest of the what's it called? The Blue Ranch series, whatever her series for the Done and Dusted books are. The Chestnut Springs books, not necessarily sure. It might be a series I might like loop back to if I do another one of these cowboy romance videos. So if you would like a part 2 of this series, I will gladly do that. It's just the last book. I really didn't expect it to be a DNF. I really thought I would be able to get through it. Not to say that it's like all cowboy romances or bad or anything like that. Like personally, through this experience, I understand why the book girlies are eating these romances up. So those are my thoughts on these cowboy romances. Thank you so much for watching this video if you made it this far, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!